welcome to episode 10 of the GS750 Restoration. In this episode we can continue changing those rings and putting the head back together and getting the engine back in one piece, and then look at starting to clean up the engine and give it a nice, probably soda blast it, and start cleaning it up so that it looks reasonably good condition when we start putting it back into the brand new looking frame when it gets back.
So with a bit of fiddling, or quite a bit of fiddling, and a lot of grunting and a little bit of swearing, eventually the barrels are back on. It's quite tricky to get the pistons into the barrel while keeping the barrel from dropping down and getting two in and then getting the other two in, but anyway, it's back in now, so that's good progress. So now that we have the barrels back on, we can start putting the head back on. I've got a new head gasket, so let's start putting this back together and seal it up.
So we're just doing the final torque down of the head to 29 foot-pounds in sequence suggested by the manual. So then there's just two little 6mm bolts at the end here, and then we can start installing the cams. So before we put these camshafts back in, we'll put a bit of lube on the journals for the bearings. Spread that around a little bit. This stuff's quite sticky, but this just gives it a bit of a lubrication in that initial startup before the oil pressure builds up. So this is the inlet camshaft. Actually, it needs to go through there, obviously. And another thing that needs to be installed is this cam chain guide in the front. It just slides down and pushes hard into there. Inlet valve, inlet cam, and the exhaust cam. Obviously these cams need to be synchronized. That's the next step in the process before we put the cam caps on.
So the alignment of the camshafts needs to be done very carefully. Obviously they need to be synchronized perfectly to the crankshaft. As that turns, it opens and closes the valves, and if that's out of time, then valves hit pistons, and that's bad. So first thing we need to do is make sure that we're aligned with top dead center. You can just see the T in there. That's top dead center for cylinders 1 and 4. The other way to double check that is to quickly have a look down the hole there, and we can see the top of the piston in number 4. And then the exhaust cam needs to have this number 1 lined up sort of horizontally with the gasket face, and we lock that into position, and then you'll see number 2 on the exhaust cam, and then there is a number 3 on the inlet cam, and we need to have exactly 20 chain pins between those 2 points, and that assures us that we have the exhaust and inlet cams in the right timing as per the crankshaft. So cams are installed, cam caps are installed, the cam idler is installed, and they're all torqued down to the appropriate specs, 5.8 foot-pounds in the case of the cam caps. I've put a bit of assembly lube on the cam lobes themselves, and I'll give that a bit of a spin over just to lubricate the cams and the shims below. So that's now the engine back together with the rings changed and the cylinders honed. The next step for this is to start cleaning the outside and giving it a polish so that it looks nice when it goes back together. So I'll plug up all the holes and start giving it a good degrease and using some buffing on it to get it looking nice. So this is what the motor looks like before cleaning. Some of the top end has been cleaned when I pulled it off originally, but yeah, there's a whole pile of grease and gunk in various spots, so hopefully we can try and clean this up and polish it. So firstly I'll degrease it, and then maybe a bit of soda blasting in various spots, and see if we can get it looking good. So in an effort to clean the engine, I found that soda blasting with this stuff seems to work really well and doesn't rough the surface up too much. Already basically cleaned the head and barrels pretty well while they're off, but for the rest of the engine, trying to collect this stuff, because it's actually quite expensive. It's almost $90 for a tub that size. So basically, as you can see, I've set up my tent in front of my garage, and inside here I have the engine on its stand inside this tent, in an effort to try and stop the soda going everywhere and try and collect some of it as well. And seems to be doing a pretty good job of cleaning the aluminium. Pretty horrible job, but it's probably the best way to do it. And then once it's clean, then I'll try and give it a polish. So yeah, stinking hot today, but has to be done. That's it for episode 10. Thanks for watching. The engine is now back together, and we've started the process of soda blasting the engine to make it look back to as close to original as possible. In the next episode we'll continue doing that, and hopefully in the next episode the parts will be back from sandblasting and powder coating, and that's when the fun starts, to start putting this thing back together. So see you in episode 11.